All right, so there's a lot of talk about third ball drop. What do we do with the third ball? All that good stuff. But a lot of times what I'm seeing, especially in beginner games, is missed fourth balls off the bounce. We talked about a couple weeks ago rolling the ball and taking that fourth ball out of the air. But what about when your opponent hits a great third ball drop, it actually drops? What do we do with that ball? Let's talk about that next. All right, so we're gonna start out with that very first tip, which is realizing court positioning of my opponents, okay? So Lauren is my first opponent. She's gonna be hitting the drop, okay? And she's gonna be further back because we have assumed I've hit a good return. I move up to the kitchen line. Her partner is gonna be in that transition zone, okay? Now, when I'm observing this situation, we're talking about a ball that's dropping and actually hitting the ground, not a ball that I'm taking out of the air. So what that means is they're realizing they've hit a good shot. Their feet position are not going to be there by the time I'm hitting the ball over back to them, right? The banner is gonna realize when Lauren hits that drop is they're gonna move forward and they're gonna be at that kitchen line, okay? Now Lauren, when she hits her drop, she's either gonna be fast enough to get to the kitchen line, or most likely when I'm hitting the ball is gonna be at her feet in the transition zone. So I'm not aiming my ball to be hitting their feet where they're at. I'm aiming my ball to be where their feet will be, right? So the best or my highest chance of making sure that I'm getting it to someone's feet is probably the person that is hitting the ball from further back. So I'm not gonna try to hit to this person. I'm gonna try to hit to that person, but I have to be careful because that banner might cross over and poach. So I wanna keep that ball a little bit low. So this is what we're looking like. So I'm gonna try to hit it to that transition zone so that it's dropping at her feet by the time she's coming in, okay? Now I'm gonna err a little bit on the high side because we see a lot of mistakes with people hitting it in the net. So I'm trying to keep it somewhat low, but not risking putting it in that net, okay? So I'm here, and then I'm trying to get it over in that transition zone on her side versus this side because that might be attackable for the banner. So that's that first tip. Notice where the court positioning is of your opponents and then play to that side that's further back. All right, before we get into hitting the ball, actually, we wanna make sure we're covering tip number 2, which is your stance. If we're coming in, I've hit the return, Lauren is hitting the drop. If I come in with a high stance and then she hits it, I'm a lot further from the ball, right, down low. If I'm not getting myself down there, then I'm not being able to see the height of the net. I'm not able to seeing the ball clearly as much, and my pal's maybe not out as front. So we wanna make sure that we wanna get a good low stance, wide, bend in the knees, and my pal's out in front so that I'm able to hit an effective fourth ball off of that drop to make sure that I'm getting it clean every single time. All right, tip number 3 has to do with the paddle angle, okay? Now, with the priority being keeping the ball in play, a lot of times we wanna make sure that paddle face is kind of straight up and down initially. But if we get the partner of Lauren, see how that kind of ball floats up? If the partner of Lauren starts poaching across, smashing us, getting these shots in that's killing our ability to win the point, then we gotta start keeping that ball a little bit lower. But err on the high side initially, see what they got, and then as we move through the game, we can start to close that pal face to make sure the ball stays lower because the ball is rising up to us from the kitchen once it bounces. So typically if it's coming up, we need to make sure that pal face is closed to keep it low, right? If the pal face is straight up and down or open and it's coming up, it's just gonna be popping up at that same angle that it's coming in at, okay? So we wanna make sure that my pal face is somewhat closed as I come through and see that ball stays really low over the net. So I wanna make sure that again, the pal face is closed, and as I come through it, it stays nice and low, especially when the ball's rising up to me. All right, before we continue on to tip 4, we wanna make sure you smash that like button and she says subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our next videos. All right, so this tip number 4 is one of the big ones that I see mistakes a lot of beginners make, and that's moving the pal too quickly through the ball. We're trying to kill that fourth ball that's bouncing and we're just way too close to the net. So we either kill it and one more, here we go. We either kill it and it goes into the net like so, okay? Okay, and we're hitting it too hard and swinging too much, or we get it over the net okay? And then we hit too hard, and that's popping up way too big. Our opponents can come in and smack it because it's just too high. So when we're hitting a fourth ball off the bounce of a drop, we want to first make sure that we keep a very short swing to it, okay? So our paddle's out in front, and it's almost like dinking the ball. However, the pace of the ball from a drop is a lot faster than a dink. So you're not going to treat it as much, you're not going to give it as much power as you would a dink, because a dink is moving really slowly. This drop is moving a lot faster, so there's more energy on the ball. So we need to make sure that I'm moving even slower through the ball than a dink. So that what it looks like, keep that paddle out in front. I'm gonna catch it as early as I can. Oh, that was too good of a drop from Lauren, sneaky on the net, okay? And I'm gonna be very short. See how short I was with that? Very soft when I get it in, try to get to the transition zone like we talked about before, and keeping it low. But it's a very out in front, short nudge to make sure that I get it in that transition zone. If I'm trying to get a little bit deeper, I wanna give a little bit more juice. So if Lauren stays back, one more time, she's doing a great job with the leaner in her arms. And I'm gonna get a little bit deeper by pushing the ball a little bit more. But I always make sure that ball's out in front, my face is a little bit closed, and moving through with just my arm, pressuring that ball, give it a little 1-inch punch almost, but I'm not taking any kind of swing to the motion. That's where it's gonna create inconsistencies, mishits, and even pop-ups. All right, so now let's talk about tip number 5, which is the exception to tip number 4. Now this exception is when they hit a drop, but the drop bounces above that level of the net, and we can take a little bit bigger swing. Now, if you expose a bigger swing, you can hit it harder, obviously, because the ball's bouncing above the net. But what I like to do is keep it look like I'm hitting soft to keep it short, and then accelerate through. So what that looks like is the ball bounces real high, and then I'm keeping it short, and then I smack it down and through, accelerating big time. But I don't give away, if I hit a big swing and then swing through, it's obvious that I'm gonna be hitting hard. So I wanna make sure that I'm kind of still looking like I'm gonna hit it soft and then accelerate through and keep my compact swing going. So one more time, and then I'm keeping my compact swing going, and then I'm working through that ball, still trying to get it to their feet. That one was a little bit high. We'll try to go one more time. Great drop from Lauren. And then I come down and get it to their feet as I come through the ball. Now, we wanna make sure though that we're making a right decision on what's high enough. Okay, so you got to be looking at the level of the net as in comparison to your weight. So if it's right around here, this isn't necessarily enough to attack. It's right around that tape. Okay, you want it a little bit above that, okay, so that you're not risking hitting that net tape. Because me and my partner are in the best position here. We don't want to give up this position. A silly mistake is putting it in the net is really terrible. We want to make sure that we're not making a mistake until they get to that kitchen line and they're even with us, and we're risking something that's important further on in the point. We're gonna make sure that we're keeping that ball in play as the priority, and then we risk as the point goes longer and longer. All right, so Alina is in training with her 3X Carbon, which is her favorite paddle, favorite tasting paddle as well. So she's been training with it a lot. So you got to make sure you pick up the same paddle. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to continue our training. We're going to get back to it.